listening to the Importance of Being show. I'm your host, Ernest Hackmon. We do this show live every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3. My guest this afternoon is Dawn Kohler, consultant extraordinaire and author of a recent book, The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. Why don't you say hi?
Thank you, Ernest. Appreciate it. And looking forward to being here today.
All right. So let's get started. I've known you when I met you, you were a consultant and you worked with, I guess, a lot of very big companies. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your life as a consultant?
Basically, what I do is executive coaching. So the coaching consultant, it's a little bit different in that executive coaching is sort of like having a personal trainer. It's all one-on-one. And companies will hire me to come in and work with their senior leaders to help them, evaluate their performance in the environment. How are they impacting it? What's working? What are they doing well? And how could they become more effective?
Okay. And then you offer them exercises or maybe a viewpoint of how it could be better?
Usually the feedback does that for me. So I look at my role as just kind of like parenting. Here's a process, keep the boundaries, stay out of the way. What's going to evolve evolves. What I don't really know anything about them when I come in. We do an intake, but then it's really, how is this person impacting their environment? And we get that through a 360 evaluation.
Okay.
So
yes, that's where everybody gets to talk.
Everybody gets rated. They rate the person on different functional areas.
Okay.
Best practices in the workplace under leadership and management, relationships, results, those type of functional areas. And then I look at the raw data and I make phone calls. So then I will call up and say, you rated him a little low in communicates in a respectful manner. Can you explain what you meant by that? Okay. That's where I get the good information because people sometimes are a little reluctant to write down something, but they seem to be less reluctant about talking about it.
Sure.
So then we get a lot of great information about what that person does as far as behavior, messaging, that type of thing. And it actually is kind of funny because what none of us really completely understand is the unintended effect we have on others.
Sure.
Meaning nobody comes into work saying, I think I'm going to, disrespect you today.
Yeah, browbeat someone.
Yeah. We don't have that intention, but our behavior, the way that we carry ourselves, our speech, all of that can convey those kind of messages to people. And, unfortunately, people still take things personally.
Yes.
And quite a bit in the workplace.
And sometimes, especially with email, right? You can
yes, a lot of that.
What starts out is with best of intentions.
Exactly. So it's just helping people become aware of the impact they have on others. I don't think, especially at the leadership level, really pay close enough attention. We get promoted because we're technically good. We get up to these senior levels, and we're just acting like we always have.
Sure.
And it can have a leaven-laying effect on some folks.
And so who hires you? The employees? Do they all put a pot together and say,
Thank God, no.
Bill could really use some coaching.
No, it's quite popular with corporations because it's so highly effective that the corporation hires me. So I'm primarily in the entertainment industry. I work with NBC, Fox Studios, a couple of the either film or networks. And they'll ask me to come in and work with division leaders. The company always pays my bill. And I prefer it that way. The employees love it because it's like a gift to them. I mean, they're being invested in. And I don't take, hey, check the box, give them coaching so then we can fire them and they can't sue us. I never take those clients.
Right.
My clients are really high potentials. Again, they've been promoted because they're technically good, but nobody along the line taught them how to be an effective leader.
Right.
So that's really what we focus on and help them develop. And if you can just change one person and one leader, they're impacting an entire team. And if they step up, generally the people that report to them step up as a result of it.
Right. And then you get an organization working in unison and resonating in the proper frequencies and all.
Right. It's a whole lot of fun. I'm very, very lucky to be just enjoying my work as much as I do.
I want to remind the listeners that this is KX at OneLaguna. That they're listening to the Importance of Being show. And my guest this afternoon is Dawn Kohler. She is executive coach And she has recently become an author. She started a new adventure, and she's written a book called The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. So what was that about? What did you just have a lot of spare time? You just like, I'm billing at such a high rate that, 30 minutes a week will do it for me.
I can't wait to get there. You know what was interesting is, given my background, I was an entrepreneur. I started a company. I grew that through the state of California, sold that, then went into coaching. You would think that I'd be writing a book on leadership.
Right.
And I started that book, but I bored myself. And I just couldn't. I thought, this sounds like pontification. There are things that I saw.
That's what you do when you get there. You say how, we did great and it was all my fault.
And again, I tried that book, but I just couldn't engage myself enough to think, I'm really not going to engage a leader. What I wanted to write a book about was what I was seeing so much in the workplace. And I have about 50-50 as far as male, female. But what I was noticing, and predominantly in some of my female executive clients, is they were still really striving. I mean, nothing was quite good enough. These are women that were at top of their game, presidents of networks and channels.
And not satisfied.
And still feeling like they had to continually prove themselves.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting that so many of us have that wound. We're not quite good enough.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see how that plays out. People often are trying to either prove it right, I'm not good enough, or they're trying to prove it wrong. And the extent that they will go in their life and their career to try to prove that they are worthy, which actually reinforces the wound in the first place.
Right.
So my concern, as I was seeing this so often in the workplace, and I've certainly experienced that in my own life, was how can we bring awareness to that so that some of these folks can kind of relax into being human, knowing we all have that part.
Right, yeah.
And it's not necessarily something to overcome, but perhaps accept and manage.
Yeah, I think probably part of just being human, right?
Right. It's like having a belly button, We were all cast out at one point in time,
Cast out.
I think some of Joseph Campbell in The Story of Myth, every culture, every society has a Garden of Eden story where we were cast out, whether it's from the womb or from God. We were just cast out. And there's a sense of, I wasn't good enough to stay in. So I had to get out.
I was good. I was happy.
Yeah, I was one with life and the world and, in this incredibly zen place. And then, boom, something happens and, wow, fall from grace.
Okay.
I'm not there anymore.
Right. On that note, we're going to take a quick break. This is KX OneLaguna. You're listening to the Importance of Being show. I am your host, Ernest Hackmon, and I'm talking with Dawn Kohler about her book, The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. We'll be right back. This is the Importance of Being show, KX OneLaguna. I'm your host. We do this show live every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3. We broadcast from our lovely studio at the One Laguna Discovery Center. My guest this afternoon is Dawn Kohler, author and executive coach. We're talking about her book, The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. And when we left off, you were talking about the being cast out, that all of us are cast out. And it was intriguing to me because I see you as such an accomplished person that I wouldn't think that there would be any weakness or vulnerabilities. So,
and there are in all of us. And like we were saying before the break, it really is like a belly button. We were all cast out, and we tend to all have a story about being cast out.
Okay.
So I've met people. I met this one woman who was describing the imposter experience of being in high-level positions and feeling like they're really not good enough. They're faking it.
Right. Yeah.
And she started to get into it. She goes, I know I've never really been good enough. And I said, when's the first time you felt that way? And she said, when I was 5 years old, I was the only child, and my mother decided to have another child.
Oh.
And so her interpretation was, as soon as the baby came home, she wasn't good enough.
That scar.
They needed
right.
It was all about her, wasn't good enough, needed to have another child to compensate for the deficit that she had. And it's interesting because it's just one of hundreds of stories that I have heard along the way of where people all of a sudden create a story based on what I think is actually a feeling we come in with.
Oh, okay.
And if you have, abuse in your history, that type of thing, so that belly button can become a very large wound depending on how you experience life or what happened to you, if you will.
Okay.
In the best of circumstances, I think we still have it. It's just a nice little belly button that isn't real sensitive.
Right, yeah.
How it pertains to the book is because I was seeing that so much and because I personally have dealt with that, and, I'll go back in time for a moment. I had a successful company for 10 years. We were the first Geek Squad and had about 100 technicians going up and down the coast, servicing corporate America with a 4-hour on-site service contract.
Right.
I didn't leave my company at the top of my game. I left my company because I hit a major depression.
Really?
So I had to go out and do an incredible amount of psychotherapy because what was happening to me is, nothing was good enough. The company kept bigger. We were on the cover of the Los Angeles Times. We were the, young, quick, upstarts, awards, everything. You're yes.
Superstar.
Yeah. Women Entrepreneur of the Year. And it was a high for about 3 days. And then afterwards I was, okay, what do I need to do next?
Right. And I need to, that wasn't enough.
And it wasn't enough. And the depression on the other side just would get so deep that finally, when I hit it for the last time, I just went down and I had to leave my company. And I went through a really serious 3-year journey where I had to travel through those lows and what they were about and where it came from and, what created that cast out feeling for me. Right. And after going through that work, it was coming out on the other end, actually, that I started to do the coaching. And what I noticed is a lot of the things that I had felt about myself that were manifesting in the workplace, other people were as well.
Wow. Okay.
So it was really an interesting journey. Then coming back to this book, the protagonist character is a journalist who's 36 years old, very opportunistic, also has the wound, but her wound is more visual. She has a physical handicap that she's relating her I'm not good enough to the physical handicap.
Sure, yes.
She is invited to spend the weekend with Emma Daines, who's an alchemy of Anne Morrow Lindbergh, who was Charles Lindbergh's wife, wrote one of my favorite books, Gift from the Sea.
Oh.
And a woman up here at UCI by the name of Judy Rosen, who's an absolute kick and just quite a personality. Okay. So Emma Daines is 72 years old. She was the ambassador to Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall, and has been very successful, a published author, senator's wife, the whole 9 yards. She's done the big game. And when Kate gets there, she finds an unpublished memoir of Emma's in the room where she's staying. Okay. And as we're interacting with Emma on the surface, Kate's going back and reading the underbelly of this highly successful woman and really understanding her vulnerabilities at 72 years old as Emma reflects back on how she was striving from a place of feeling inadequate.
Okay.
So similar to what you said in the beginning, you're like, I've seen you as this all that person. I wouldn't imagine that.
From the outside, you're just like, wow, she's got it all. Come on, right?
Right. And that's who Emma Daines is at 72, looking back saying, this is what was happening inside of me.
Well, and that's kind of interesting because, what I've said is that we're all running on our own little wheels. So we're not looking at what's going on with other people. And other than if you cut someone off on the freeway, but as you're driving on the freeway, there are thousands of cars passing you and you don't care a thing about those people. You're just trying to get to your, you're worried about what you're going to eat for lunch or, are you wearing the right clothes or what have you?
Right.
So how did you, muster up the courage to go and do the hard, internal work, right? Because you could buy stuff or you could, find some distraction.
It wasn't an option. I was actually lucky in that the depression hit a place where I wasn't functioning. I think a lot of times we can function through kind of a malaise or some depression, and we can medicate, we can do some things, and we can avoid the hard work because we can stay just under the waterline and survive. I had 3 young children at home, 3 children under the age of 5 at the time, and it wasn't an option. I was at a point where whatever was happening to me, I had to deal with immediately because I needed to be able to come out of that to be present for my kids. Forget about my company. I needed to be present for my kids.
Right. I want to remind the listeners that this is KX at OneLaguna. You're listening to the Importance of Being show. Guest this afternoon is Dawn Kohler, executive coach par excellence, and recent author of The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma, talking about, I guess, human frailty and vulnerability even amongst powerful people.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about the story and how did you find an angle to come in and tell it?
Well, I think the angle really was this Emma Danes character, because I wanted somebody that was, an American idol almost, an iconic figure, and she's set up that way in the book. And I wanted to show that even people that we think are just have it all down,
yes,
still have this vulnerability. And revealing the underbelly of her helped me in my way bring light to that. Okay. That there's so much that goes on with each of us, and we have such complexities. And we spend a great deal of time masking that in the world.
Right.
One of the points in the book, which will not give the reveal because there's lots of different twists and unpredictable
yes.
parts of this
book.
Did
the butler do it?
Yeah. There's a mystery that goes through this book because Emma Danes, Kate, the original protagonist, wants to get her interview. Emma Danes lost a child at the age of 4 to a kidnapping, and she's never told the story.
Yes.
So she's trying to get that story, and Emma's trying to not tell that story to anybody. So anyway, but this underbelly of who she is and how she went through life trying to mask those wounds that she had for various different reasons. And at the end of the memoir, one of the things that is written by Emma, and keep in mind now, she was very instrumental. She was an ambassador to Germany and was instrumental in bringing down the Berlin Wall. She had been a freedom fighter. And one of her last points in her memoir is, we can dismantle the great walls of the world, but we will not be free as a species until we dismantle the walls from within.
Oh, okay. Which
is really Emma's journey, and it's all of our journey.
Sure. Absolutely.
And her message, if you will, in the book is we're all being called to do that. And especially now, when we need our human resources, we need what we were born to do to come into fruition, and we need that now. We need it for our generation and for the generations that are coming forth. So that's really, for me, I see it in the workplace. I've experienced it in my own life. I've had to do a lot of my own work, and by doing my work back in my early 30s, that's when I actually became a writer. Okay. I had written a memoir prior, and this is my second book in fiction, but that's where I aligned with me. And a lot of what I was doing before was the goals of the mask, not necessarily the self.
Oh, okay. Wow. So I want to remind the listeners that this is KX at OneLaguna. My guest this afternoon is Dawn Kohler, and she has recently written a book, The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. So you've been an executive coach, you've been a successful business owner, and so you've started writing, but what was the transition like to do this work of fiction?
So the work of fiction, I had the story because, again, I knew I had a very passion to write Emma's message, if you will. And I didn't want to do it in nonfiction because it sounds like pontificating. I thought it would be much more interesting in story. So I began to write the story organically. And I had written the entire book, and I was going out to writers' conferences and meeting with people and talking about it. And then I found out, well, there's actually a structure to story. That, like building a house, you need to have the right architecture involved. I mean, you need to have the right structure. There needs to be an inciting incident. Your protagonist has to have a goal. You're going to have your protagonist is going to run up against antagonistic forces, and it's going to challenge their character. Then they have to make a choice, a reaction. That's what reveals.
Okay.
And as I'm reading, everything's going off on me because as I'm reading about the structure of story and a character arc, it's exactly the same in coaching.
Oh.
We have a character arc. All of us do.
Okay.
And if we become conscious of that character arc, that not only is every everyday life is giving us a circumstance, and we all have things that we want to do, and we all have setbacks, and it's really those reactions to those setbacks that determines whether we strengthen our character or we reinforce our fears and sense of worthiness or lack of worthiness.
Yes.
And that can become a very conscious path if we simply take structure of story and apply it to it.
Okay.
So one of the really fun things that came out of this book is I'm actually doing a workshop next week in Malibu called Master the Story of Your Life.
Okay.
Where we're taking our life as individuals and we're removing ourselves from being the protagonist, key actor,
right.
and looking at it more as the writer saying, okay, tell me about you as the protagonist in your life.
Yeah, mere character.
Yes. What has your character arc been? What do you want it to be? What are your antagonistic forces? Where are they repeating themselves? And how? And what's your mask? What mask did you don when you felt the fall from Eden? We all have. We all associate it with something. And what did you do as a result of that to get attention or power or acceptance in the world?
Okay.
And today, are your goals that of the authentic self? Or are they the goals of that mask?
Okay.
So it's just a lot of fun being able to, in this workshop, incorporate the coaching and the writing, all using the metaphor of story structure.
Okay. And so what's your process or how long did it take and what are you a person who writes every day or you you hole up in your office for a week at a time? How does that work?
I'm a binge writer. So I don't have a schedule. And I really am a binge writer. I mean, there would be times where, yes, I would hold up for the weekend.
Okay.
And sometimes I would get up early in the morning. I don't really, I can't say I've actually had a schedule because I have 3 kids. So at the time that I wrote most of the book, I had teenagers at home coming and going.
Life was going on.
Life was going on. And so it's, you write when you're not dealing with or, helping somebody else through some of the adventure. So it was really, if I wasn't working with the family or coaching, then I was writing.
Okay. And so what has that process felt like as, just saying I'm actually going to be a writer. I'm not just writing for fun or I'm not just jotting down some notes here or there. But, you say I'm doing this. You're a very purposeful person. You've accomplished things. So, going into saying I'm going to be an author now, what's that like?
I think I'm in the process of that transition right now.
Okay.
Because I know what I will arrive when people will say, hey, what do you do? And I say, I'm a writer. Right now, I still say I'm an executive coach.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to the day that the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, I'm a writer. And I'm hoping that'll be on book 2. This book is a series. This is the first of 7. So I look forward to the day that I hear myself say that.
Okay. Well, wow. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a bit with Ernest Hackmon. And I do this show live every Saturday afternoon, and you can tell because of the mistakes.
That's what makes it fun.
And so this afternoon, we've been talking with Dawn Kohler, executive coach in corporate America, and also author of a recent book, The Invitation, A Weekend with Emma. And I saw on your website that you have started the Emma Dane Foundation, I guess, wrapped around your one of your characters in the book.
It is, and it's called the Emma Dane Society. And what it is it's a fan page and a little bit more. This book is considered visionary fiction, and visionary fiction is a genre that is basically fiction with a philosophy. Okay. So Emma's has a philosophy, obviously that would be mine, that we're using characters. And the philosophy is really that we are at such an important point in our evolution, and it really is incumbent upon all of us to take that personal responsibility. How are you impacting your environment?
Okay.
And are you bringing out the best of who you are in the world?
Okay.
And what circumstances in your life are calling upon you to do so? Going back to the structure of story, we all have these inciting incidences, just like Dorothy had with the tornado. What's happening in your life? Are you experiencing a change in health? Is there a family member? Have you lost a relationship? A birth of a child, some positive change, a new job? are you experiencing that feeling like, this is just, I'm dying on the vine here. I'm so out of alignment. I'm not happy, high anxiety, depression. All of those are our internal cues that say, I'm not in alignment. And it's really paying attention. And that's Emma Dane Society. It's really society based on encouraging people to take their journeys, to pay attention to what's calling your attention right now and saying, okay, I'm going to stop in this very hurried life and take some time to look at this. Okay. What is this trying to tell me about me? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to embrace? Okay. And, to eventually come more into ourselves and to be a greater asset to this human evolution. And again, we really need all of us right now.
Yeah, to be better positioned to do your part.
Exactly.
Okay. And if someone was interested in pursuing this further, how would they find you?
They can find me at dawnkohler.com. That's DAWNKOHLER, like the Sinks, but not related, unfortunately.
And they can find about the Emma Dane Society through that as well.
Right. You can go online and you'll read a little bit more about that. You can just click sign up, and that will put you on my email list. And I will send you nice little messages about every 2 weeks. Okay. And you'll also get any updates on the books coming out. I have one more side note on that, if we've got a minute. Okay,
going,
great.
Sure.
Then there's another aspect of the book and that's really important. And the Emma Dane Society and the proceeds of the book are going to send funding to organizations on human trafficking. And the reason it comes in the book is the subplot of the book is Emma's best friend, whose name is Camille. She runs a nonprofit out of a small art studio in Aptos, which is where the book takes place, which is up by Carmel in Northern California. And her private foundation raises, in the book, this is all fictional, raises money from private funders, private donations. And with Grassroots, she has information about what children are about to be picked up to go into the sex trafficking trade. Okay. And they go pick up those kids instead and put them into boarding schools until they're 18 years old with that fund.
Diversion.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a diversion from the trafficking. That is such a huge problem. It happens in our country as well. About 80% of the trafficking is in Asia, however, and in that part of the world. But it's soul killing to a child to have them abused in any way. Absolutely. And so because part of that experience comes out in the book, those proceeds are going to go to help prevent that and educate girls on some of the ways that they're lured into those trafficking organizations.
Okay, well, wow. That's quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Well, we're just about out of time, but I want to thank you for coming. You've been absolutely amazing. And so thanks for being on the show.
And thank you. This was really enjoyable. Appreciate it.
Good. I want to remind the listeners, this is KX at OneLaguna. You've been listening to the Importance of Being show. We do this show every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3, and we'll be back next week. I hope that you will join us.